An animal as big as a 2-year-old calf, with a round head and a man's face. The forefeet are like an ape's, and so are the hind feet. It has frizzy hair, a short tail, and ears like a man's. One has been seen near Lipomani Lagoon, in the neighborhood of which it lives. It is a very solitary animal. The people of the country are very frightened of it, and run from it, as it does from them. The Admiral of Madagascar, 1658. So this week we are going to do a request from a fellow YouTuber named Nature Enjoyer, who does some pretty great videos about a variety of different nature topics, including cryptids. But they requested for us to talk a little bit about the giant lemurs in Madagascar.
Yes, so while there are 107 species of lemurs on the island of Madagascar today, there were a variety of giant species that are now thought to be extinct, such as the giant gorilla lemur, Archaeoindris, the giant sloth lemur, Paleopropithecus, the Edward koala lemur, or actually the koala lemurs, Megalodapus, the baboon lemur, Hadriopithecus, the giant ruffled lemur, Pachylemur, Gilii, and the giant eye, Daubintonia robusta. So that's a lot of lemurs. There's so many lemurs, and there is some discrepancy between sources for when all these became extinct. Of course, it's also possible they did not become extinct at the same time. The extinction rate dates range from when? When did you say?
So the ones that I saw were 2,000 to 500 years ago.
Okay,
But
so
some fossils, they said we literally haven't been able to date them at all yet. So it depends.
unknown to 2,000 years ago to the 17th century. Yeah, so there's a big gap. Like,
Yeah,
we don't really know.
most cryptid sources will try and take the lower estimate and say like the 17th century or something to go right up to the edge, but that's a little bit debatable.
Yes. So even if it did go extinct only 400 years ago or so, the reason it's considered a cryptid is because there have been sightings very recently, as recently as the 1990s, of extremely large lemurs.
Mm-hmm. There was one in 91 of men camping in Madagascar near the mountains when they encountered a creature that was supposedly 2 meters tall, so over 6 feet, broad shoulders, long arms. The creature, possibly the legendary Trey,
Or try.
observed them curiously but hesitated to approach. They threw some food at it, but when their fire faded, the creature sort of left. It doesn't necessarily say in the full sighting if the creature was on 2 legs or 4 legs or how it was standing, I don't think.
Yeah. They heard excited breathing and strange tongue clicking. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a big thing that they were afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Because it went tray. That was what they were mostly afraid of, I guess, was they recognized the sound of the tray. And then there was also another sighting at the same time, right? Where some girls were by the river and they saw one in the river struggling to get out. It was wailing
Right.
desperately. They ran away. And then there was no one able to find it again after that.
It seems like there were a bunch of sightings in the 90s, early 90s. There was another one where it was 3 men who witnessed it on the Masawala Peninsula. Is this your opinion or is this...
No, I
Oh, well,
took this
someone
off of
stated that it could have been a pachylemur. Yeah, it kind of sounds like they're cautious of humans, but humans are also kind of scared of them in the sightings.
Well, no, because this was something that they set a marking because they were looking for giant lemurs, I guess. Or I don't even know. They were looking for the Kisawala, which is
A pachylemur, right? Or supposed to be.
yeah. That's that's a cryptid. Sorry. I got confused because there's so many. So the Kisawala, they were looking for this cryptid, and so they were marking where they had already searched by putting a big spear there, and they put a hat on top of the sphere. And then when they returned, they found a dead lemur there because it had jumped onto the hat. So that wasn't afraid of humans. It was like trying to attack them, right? I mean,
Well, there's a lot of interpretation there. I just mean that the creatures don't seem to be like just strolling in and strutting into the villages. Seem to always
yeah.
be like on the edges.
Well, that's what everyone is
Um,
saying, is that they're really good at hiding.
And to be fair, pretty much a large, well, we said we don't know when all of the different ones went extinct, but a lot of them probably did live alongside humans. And in fact, it says that humans may have been the reason that a lot of them went extinct.
Yeah, I don't think that is disputable. I think humans are the reason most of these animals went extinct. There's evidence of butchering, like clean cuts. So it's not a
Yeah,
question of have the humans on Madagascar ever lived with lemurs. It's are there any huge ones still left, right?
yeah,
And I guess it's similar to the Yowie in Australia. It's possible that a lot of this is folklore now because they remember when they were big lemurs that might have been slightly aggressive to them or something. And so then you pass that story down, and then you see something, a lemur, since again there are so many and they're all different varieties, and it's a little bigger than usual, or you mistake it because it's dark or something, and then you think it's bigger than it is. Then you say, oh, it's one of these endless cryptid lemurs. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, it's those things that always pop up when you're looking into a cryptid. It's like misidentification. And the other thing is that people tend to overestimate the size of an animal.
Mm-hmm.
So that would make it pretty tricky to verify something just based on a sighting.
Another type of giant lemur sighting I find interesting is some of them are Bigfoot types, where they're saying this type of giant lemur is really interested in fire and in human activity. An eyewitness said that he was lying awake by the fire and then he saw a lemur, or I guess a very short of stature wild man of the woods covered with hair, warming himself by the fire. The lemur took a stick from the fire and like brandished it at the man who ran away. So this is an animal that is into fire in a human type way. Yeah, so some of these lemur cryptids are more like a Bigfoot type thing, which is interesting.
Yeah. I guess if you try and say any positives, I mean, some of the rainforests are pretty dense and there was so many different kinds. Wow, like,
Well, yeah, so one thing about Madagascar that you will know if you've ever studied ecology is it's one of the best examples of deforestation ever. So in the past 20 years, Madagascar has lost 25% of its tree cover. And remember that the last sightings that I could find were in the 90s. Um, since recorded, since like they've started recording this, Madagascar has lost 80% of its natural areas. In 1955, Bernard Heuvelmans, who was really adamant that there were these giant lemurs out there, said that there were over 8 million undeveloped acres of forest. So that's just not true today because even though there are some forests left, a lot of it has been destroyed. In Madagascar, they have traditionally practiced slash and burn agriculture to make rice fields. So they just totally destroy bits of the forest. There's also people burn wood for fuel, and people are cutting down the forest for mining. So um, yeah, it's really, if there were hidden giant lemurs, they might have all gone extinct in the past 20 years, possibly.
yeah, yeah. That's what it sort of sounds like. That they may have been around a lot longer, but that maybe not today because of that. I think
Mm-hmm.
isn't there like a quote from Carl Schuker that he's like, there may be a few pockets left where they could be hiding,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not very likely.
Yes, so I looked into some pockets where they might be hiding. I found two potential places. There are probably more that I don't know about. One of them is called the Great Singi Strict Nature Reserve. It's central west Madagascar. It's a labyrinth made of limestone pinnacles, and it's rumored to have strange animals in it. It's off limits to tourists, apparently, and it was featured in an expedition 100 Miles of Wild that was announced in 2014. And then we had to go do some digging to find out the results of that expedition. One thing that happened was at the end, they had to be evacuated because they were unprepared and they were dehydrated. I finally was able to find the map that they made, which we can put on the YouTube video, and the blog and final report. So I linked the blog, Thomas, if you want to. I mean, if you click on that link, you can see a bunch of photos. Basically, on this expedition, these athlete, what are they called? Adventurer types discovered some caves, some evidence of 17th century habitation in the area, some dinosaur tracks, and healthy lemur populations of known species. But they did say
Gosh
the
darn it.
northern portion could have more stuff to discover, but they had to, they were unprepared. What do you think
You
about that?
know, I'm sort of thinking that considering what is there 180 known species of lemur, that there could be like yet to be discovered species, but I feel like they probably won't be giants. They'll probably just be like some really close relative of an already known one.
Yeah, of course, it's easy to find like new species
Not a
on
yeah,
Madagascar, but it's not going to be something really big necessarily. You'll probably find small things.
and it would be cool if they found the gorilla-sized one.
Yeah. Okay, here's more expeditions that I found information about. There's a lost forest in the central east part of Madagascar. It was the focus of a Rainforest Trust and National Geographic expedition. They found a lot of new species, but no giant lemurs. They found some frogs and stuff like that, I think.
They always find frogs.
Yeah. And then finally, I actually watched this video on YouTube. I was like, this is good. This is going to be good. It was an
Is this the
Animal Planet
Forest Galante
expedition.
video?
I don't remember, but it was on Animal Planet.
The guy with the beard?
I don't know. He just said he was looking for pachylemurs. He was looking for the giant ruffled lemur. But then it was like all this buildup, and then you get there, and they're just hanging out with normal red ruffled lemurs. It was so such a waste of my time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the Forest Galante show, Extinct or Alive.
But he was basically concluding that people had said that there were giant pachylemurs there, and he was thinking that they were just a case of misidentification, because there already is a red ruffled lemur there, so they just thought it was bigger than it was.
Yeah. Although I will say, I remember when he was going up, like up into the canopies, and he was saying like people never go this high,
Mm-hmm.
and like all of the giant ones, or I think all of them were like tree dwelling. So I guess that might lend a little bit of credibility to them being hidden above.
So I guess finally we could just list all the types of giant lemurs because I compiled this information as well as what they're most likely, like what they've been
Yep.
compared to. So I've found 9. Like I said, or I alluded to, this was very difficult to research because there are just so many types of lemurs, and then some people will say, oh, it looks like this one. No, it looks like that one, which is most of the argument about it. It's not like, could it still be out there? It's mostly, which one were they describing? Anyway, so the first one is the chimp-sized, man-faced tre, which people say is the Paleopropithecus, which is otherwise known as the giant sloth lemur. Man-faced is the big thing there. It has to have a short snout. Then there's the Kidoki, which is described as a large sifaka, which is an extant species. That is thought to be the Archaeolemur or the Hadropithecus. And again, the Archaeolemur is the giant gorilla lemur, and the Hadropithecus is the baboon lemur. There's the Tokandia, which is known from this folk saying that some goby goes straight ahead, but the Tokandia moves and jumps. This is a huge jumping quadruped. It's koala-shaped, and it's the size of a bear. So that would be, I guess, Megalodapus, the koala lemur. Then there's also the habebi, the large white sheep. It's like so funny because some of these aren't even describing lemurs. They're like, it was a sheep. But it's a large white sheep lemur. It's nocturnal and it has cloven hooves, which is also thought to be the Megalodapus, the koala lemur, because they were thinking that maybe you could have like a weird paw shape that looks like a hoof to help you walk on the ground or something. Then there's the Mangursahawk, which is donkey-like. So this is the famous donkey lemur that we all know and love. It's also, people are terrified of it. And so I read some things that were like, it doesn't make sense to be terrified of a donkey. They must be thinking of the eye. because people are known to be terrified of eyes. And then I read another thing that was like, maybe this is just people confusing lemurs and hippos.
Well,
So, people are like, I'm afraid of it. So it must be like, I'm afraid of hippos and lemurs climb in the trees. Therefore, this thing, I don't know. It's weird. Then there's the Kalanoro or the Kotoko, which is more like the Bigfoot as we described before, 2 to 3 feet man, sometimes aquatic. So like a mermaid, which would be similar to Hadropithecus, Archaeolemur, or a primitive human species. Then we have the Kisuala, which the Animal Planet expedition was looking for, which is giant and has red fur, just a bigger version of the Pachylemur.
I
The giant
remember,
eye.
sorry, just trying to find more things about the Kiswala after I watched that video, and that like
Mm,
it kept saying like this is folklore, this is a legend, this is
mm,
like
yeah.
a lot of Madagascar folklore sites, or yeah, like, they were pretty
Yeah, and then
adamant that like this is a story, don't, but who knows?
that was what they were trying to push, which was like, look how much of a waste of time it was for us to look for this, because it's just the pachylemur normal. There are some people who think the giant eye is still out there, which is separate, I guess, from the donkey lemur, even though they might be the same thing. The giant eye seems to have been hunted by humans. Then there's a bunch like of more ones that are miscellaneous. The Cercopithecus, Paleoprothechius, Archeon. I wrote these down and I didn't give context. Sorry. Anyway, the Babocotia, the Mesopropithecus, and the Thanact. And I just didn't find more information about them. Like, I don't know. Just people think that they're out there, these various folklore figures or extinct species that we know existed. And my final point is that they do have a word for bear in some languages, or in the language of Madagascar, beara. It's used in folklore, but there are no bears there. So what does this mean? Is this a surviving giant lemur species? Well, you don't have to have something be around for you to have a word for it, you know? Considering it these animals went extinct possibly in the last 400 years when people definitely had language. I mean,
Hmm.
like in Ireland they have a word for wolf. That doesn't mean there are wolves there now. So, yeah, it was just I didn't really like that argument cuz just because people have a word for something doesn't mean that it is currently existing. Like I have a word for
Dragon.
dragon, and I also was going to say I have a word for Attila the Hun, but I don't believe that Attila the Hun is going to come bursting through my door. So, yeah.
T-Rex. How does he know that word?
Anyway, it was sort of interesting to look into this, and I really think Madagascar is a cool place. I just wish there would be more of these expeditions and that they would have more to say than we found some caves and it was hard. Like, do some harder work, folks. Just because there's a lot of
Yeah.
potential. But even given
Yeah,
the potential, what do you think?
again, I think there's lemur discoveries to be made. I think that's really interesting. The giant lemurs. Why is it always giants that we haven't discovered, but we've discovered the smaller versions?
Because people, again, I think this is a psychological thing. People want things to be big.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like when I'm watching Jurassic Park, I'm not interested in those little guys that eat the little girl or whatever on the beach. Like I want to see the big dinosaurs. You know what I mean? Spoiler alert for one of the Jurassic Park movies. Sorry. Didn't they eat the little girl, or she ran away and they ate someone else? I forgot.
She survives. She survives in the books, and she technically survives in the movie.
Oh, that's good.
Or
Well, anyway,
John Hammond said she survived, I think.
okay. I'm just saying that people want things to be big, and there were big lemurs before, and people remember because they've been living there for a long time. They're an old civilization.
Like in Australia with like Dreamtime, like
Hmm.
how was that, like that's something crazy, like thousands of years stories have been
Hmm.
passed down, right? This is
More than
only
thousands, like tens of thousands.
right, and this is
Yeah.
like a few hundred, maybe if we're going by lower limits, which or maybe even a little bit less. So like that's only, I mean, it's not that many generations, especially if it was part of like the culture. So
Right. So I think a culture that is like surrounded by lemurs, as they clearly are, and you're sort of interested in the mysterious forest, which is obviously as we found in one of these expeditions, difficult to pass through, it would be natural to want to believe that a large, charismatic, spooky lemur is still out there, especially if you remember that they were out there in your cultural memory.
Yep. And then, as we said, add on top of that, the people often overestimate the size of an animal or misidentify it. Like, I don't know, even if they were there, there's so many obstacles that make it seem like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
and a lot of it is like like you're trying to justify your own reaction. Like if you're out in the woods and you're a big strong hunter man and you get scared by something, you want to tell people that it was big, not that it was a stupid little tiny lemur that everyone has seen before. I was reading a book last night and there was a person in kayak and they hit like a beaver and they freak out because they think it's an alligator. And that just shows what people like they're more willing to believe they were scared from something scary than scared of something normal and harmless.
Right.
So what do we think? What's our verdict? Giant lemurs, real,
Well, I'd just
existing
say,
out there
in
or
terms
not
of,
existing?
I say the likelihood is low. So I'd
Okay.
put it
The
politely.
likelihood is low, but the hope is high.
Yeah. That's for all the cryptids, though.
Yeah, well, not all of them. Some things you don't want to be out there. Like you don't want to see Mothman because Mothman is just going to tell you something's bad, like something bad is going to happen to you, right?
It might save your life.
Maybe.
You didn't tell anyone, though, about the bridge. You just scared a bunch of
Yeah, he
people.
just
And
freaked them
then
out, and they were like, "You must have been trying to warn us." Like
you kept showing me pictures of a bridge and screaming.
maybe the giant lemurs are out there trying to warn people that they should stop burning down their forests.
That's why he picked up that stick from the fire.
Yeah, that's he was like, "Ah, get out of here and stop overdeveloping your country."
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Thanks for the
right.
suggestion, Nature
Yeah, we
Enjoyer.
had fun.
Yeah, he'll probably, I don't know, but maybe at some point he'll do a video and it'll be a bigger deep dive.
So if you do have other suggestions for us, like cryptid courts we could do or anything like that, you can please email us at
thewildworldpodcast@gmail.com. That's thewildworldpodcast@gmail.com.
yes. We don't currently have any questions, but we're waiting for your questions. Or I guess you can contact Thomas on his